The jump was a silent, gut-wrenching twist of reality, and then the starfield resolved into chaos. PAL 7 hung in the view, a peaceful green orb now marred by the angry, pulsing scars of fires on its surface. Between the planet and the Harmony's hand, the Vorax swarm moved. Their ships were like metallic piranhas, sleek and fast, darting around the bulky, defenseless colony freighters, harrying them with bright lances of green plasma. One of the colony's few defense platforms shattered silently into molten debris. On the bridge of the Harmony's hand, there was only the sound of soft, horrified breathing. Commander Elria gripped her console, her slender body rigid with helpless grief. Jay felt sick. This was the reality the Commons had always fled from, the horror their philosophy could not stop. "Where is the Steadfast?" Elria whispered. A new signal appeared on the edge of the sensor screen, emerging from the shadow of a large asteroid. It was not graceful. It was a brutal gray wedge pushing forward on a plume of fire, so bright and raw it looked like a chemical explosion. The Steadfast moved not like a dancer, but like a hammer being thrown. On the Steadfast's bridge, the world was noise, vibration, and stark red light. Alarms blared constantly, but the crew's voices cut through them, calm and clipped. 2 raiders breaking from the main group. "Vectoring on the primary habitat dome," Ji-Woo reported, her fingers flying over her console. "Acknowledged. Daehyun, intercept solution. Tae-Seok, give me full power to the forward deflectors." Sumin's voice was flat, a rock in the storm. She was strapped into her command frame, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Steadfast turned. The maneuver was not a smooth arc. It was a violent, neck-snapping change of direction, as lateral thrusters fired at full burn, shoving the ship onto a new course. On the Harmony's hand, Jay watched in disbelief as the humans endured forces that would have turned a Sill's bones to powder. The 2 Vorax raiders saw the newcomer and pivoted, spitting streams of plasma. The bolts splashed against the Steadfast's hull in bursts of sizzling light. The human ship shuddered, but did not slow. A warning light flashed on Sumin's panel a hull breach in a non-vital storage bay. She ignored it. "Locked," Daehyun said. Fire. Deep within the Steadfast, magnetic coils charged and released with a sound like the sky tearing. A 2-meter-long rod of solid tungsten, invisible to the eye at this range, screamed across the void. There was no brilliant energy beam. One moment the lead Vorax ship was there. The next, it was an expanding cloud of shrapnel and vaporized metal, ripped open from stem to stern by pure kinetic fury. The second raider faltered, its firing pattern breaking. The Steadfast plowed through the debris cloud, the pings and scrapes against its hull sounding like a hailstorm. "The swarm is converging on us," Ji-Woo said. "Good," Sumin replied. "Draw them away from the colony. Tae-Seok, ready the coolant vent on my mark. Daehyun, target the largest cluster." The Vorax, enraged and confused by the sudden, brutal loss, swarmed. 6 of them closed in, plasma fire painting the Steadfast in a constant, flickering green glow. Shields failed in sections. Armor blackened and boiled away. Vent now. Tae-Seok hit a control. Along the Steadfast's midsection, valves blew open, ejecting a cloud of spent reactor coolant, a radioactive, corrosive slurry the humans considered a waste product. The expanding cloud engulfed 3 of the pursuing raiders. On the common sensors, their energy signatures flickered and died as their delicate external systems corroded and shorted out. Full spectrum burst, all channels. "Scream at them." Sumin ordered. Ji-Woo sent a blast of raw, chaotic noise, every frequency at maximum power, a digital shriek that overloaded sensors and comms. To the Vorax, used to the ordered silence of space or the focused signals of Commons tech, it was a sensory hammer blow. Their formation shattered into confusion. In the midst of the chaos, the Steadfast kept moving, kept firing. Another tungsten rod found its mark, then another. It was not a battle of finesse. It was a brutal brawl. The human ship took hit after hit, its lights flickering, atmosphere leaking from a dozen wounds, but its core systems, the engine, the mass driver, the reinforced command deck held. It held because it was built for a universe that was always trying to kill it. On the Harmony's hand, the crew watched in stunned silence. They saw not a warship, but a wounded, cornered beast refusing to die, and in its refusal, tearing its attackers apart. Jay saw the beauty he had longed for, but it was not gentle. It was ferocious. It was the beauty of a cliff face enduring a hurricane. The Vorax had never faced anything like this. They preyed on the peaceful. They had no tactics for an enemy that used its own hull as a weapon, that fought through damage that would cripple their own ships, that responded to plasma with physics and radio noise. The heart of their swarm was gone. The survivors, their morale broken, spun away and vanished into flickers of jump drives, fleeing the terrifying. Unkillable thing from the death world. Silence returned to the space around Coffle 7. The colony was scarred, but intact. The Steadfast drifted, a battered, smoking hulk, its running lights dark, a trail of debris floating in its wake. Elria's voice was a husk of itself. "Hail them!" The screen flickered. The image was grainy, streaked with static. Su Min's face appeared. There was a cut on her forehead, a smear of soot on her cheek. Behind her, the bridge was a cave of red emergency lights and flashing alarms. But she was alive. They all were. "Steadfast reporting," she said, her voice raspy but steady. "Threat neutralized. Colony is secure. We have some systems damaged to repair." Elria could not find the words. The principles of Concord offered no scripture for this moment. "Captain Su Min, you saved them. Your ship, your crew, are functional," Su Min finished. She took a slow breath. "Your people are safe." That was the mission. Jay stepped forward, his heart pounding. He looked at the scarred face on the screen, the face of the being from the nightmare world who had just fought a nightmare for them. All his hopes, his dreams of gentle friends, crystallized and then shattered in that moment, replaced by a harder, truer understanding. We hoped for friends," Jay said, his voice trembling but clear. "We dreamed of those who would share our quiet gardens." Su Min's eyes met his through the screen. The fierce intensity of the battle was fading, leaving something else, something weary, but unwavering. She gave a single, slow nod. "You have them," she said. "But our friendship does not look like quiet gardens, Jay. It looks like this." She gestured vaguely at the ruined bridge behind her. "It looks like standing between the storm and those who cannot face it. It is not a peaceful friendship, but it is a real one. We will stand always." The transmission ended. On the Harmony's hand, the quiet was different now. It was not the quiet of helplessness. It was the quiet after a gale has passed, when the air is clear and the world, though damaged, is still standing. Jay looked away from the screen to the lumine blossom in its case. It was still beautiful. It was still fragile. But he saw it differently now. Its beauty was not weakness. It was a choice made possible, because somewhere, out there were beings like Su Min and her crew, beings forged in the furnace of a death world, who had decided that such beauty was worth defending. Not with words, but with tungsten and willpower and a refusal to fall. The galaxy's calculus had changed. The hopeful and the hardy had met. And the hopeful had learned that sometimes the hardest ground grows the strongest shield. They had hoped for friends. They had gotten something more, guardians. And for the first time in their long, peaceful history, The galactic commons felt not the fear of the storm, but the solid, unyielding presence of a wall against it. The polite, if strained, cultural exchange was shattered by a sound the Harmony's hand was never built to produce. A screaming priority alert from the Galactic Commons deep-range network. It overrode all systems, casting the soft lounge lights in a harsh, pulsing crimson. Commander Elria moved to the command dais, her graceful fingers flowing over the controls. The image of a serene nebula on the main viewer vanished, replaced by the frantic, large-eyed face of a SIL dispatcher. Commander Elria. Emergency beacon, concordance level 0. The agricultural colony on Col 7 is under attack. Vorax raiders. Multiple vessels. Colony defenses are failing. The Harmony's hand is the only registered ship within response range. A map flashed up. Thal 7 was a small green world, a breadbasket for a nearby cluster of systems. The Harmony's hand was a short jump away. Between them and the colony, the Vorax signals swarmed like angry insects. Che felt a cold dread seep into his core. The Vorax were a scourge, a nomadic species of pirates who preyed on the peaceful, undefended worlds of the commons. They were not conquerors. They were locusts stripping colonies of resources and technology before fleeing. Their ships were fast, lightly shielded, and armed with rapid-firing plasma casters designed to overwhelm and terrify. The colonists? Elria asked, her voice tight. 40,000 sentients, mostly agriculturalists. No combat training. Their distress call. It is desperate. Elria closed her eyes for a moment, a profound grief washing over her features. When she opened them, they held the resigned sorrow of her entire civilization. Acknowledge the beacon. Transmit that we have received it. Plot a course to the nearest commons outpost, maximum safe speed. We must report. A stunned silence filled the bridge. Jay understood the logic. The Harmony's hand had no weapons. Its shields were designed to deflect micrometeoroids and radiation, not plasma bolts. To go to Kfail 7 was to die pointlessly, adding their wreckage to the tragedy. The Commons way was to bear witness, to mourn, to seek nonviolent solutions that took generations. It was a painful, honorable surrender to a cruel calculus. Wait. The voice was flat, calm, and cut through the mournful silence. Captain Su-Min had been standing at the rear of the bridge, observing. Now she stepped forward, her boots making a solid sound on the deck. Her officers Dae-Hyan, Tae-Seok, and Ji-Woo fell in behind her, their postures shifting subtly from observation to readiness. Commander Elria, Su-Min said, you are leading them. Elria turned, her expression one of profound apology. Captain, we cannot help them. My ship is not capable of combat. To go there is suicide. I must preserve my crew and report, so that others may be warned. Understood, Su-Min nodded, as if this were a simple tactical parameter. May I see the tactical data? The enemy ship profiles, their last known positions. Elria, confused, but seeing no reason to refuse, gestured. The data streamed to the main viewer schematics of the dark-like Vorax raiders. Energy signatures, recorded weapon yields. Su-Min studied it, her eyes flicking across the information. She didn't look grieved. She looked focused, like a mechanic diagnosing a faulty engine. Dae-Hyan leaned in, murmuring something about engine clusters and shield harmonics. Tae-Seok was running calculations on a rugged data slate. Ji-Woo listened, her head tilted. The plasma weapons are low penetration, high rate of fire, Su-Min mused aloud. Designed for panic and saturation. Their shields are weak against kinetic impact. Their hulls are thin. They rely on speed and numbers. She turned to her team. Assessment? The Steadfast can take a hit from those, Dae-Hyan said, his voice low. Our armor is rated for orbital debris at high relative velocity. Their plasma is hotter but less focused. Course plot? Su Min asked. Chi Wu answered. We can use the asteroid field at the K-Thul system's edge for cover. Their sensors are no better than ours. We can get close. Primary weapon? Su Min looked at Tay-Seok. The engineer tapped his slate. Mass driver is operational. We have 12 tungsten rods left from the orbital clearing operations at Luna. At the velocities we can achieve, a single hit will be catastrophic to their hull integrity. It's not pretty. It's just physics. Su Min turned back to Elria, who was watching this rapid, cold exchange with a mixture of horror and disbelief. We can help. Elria stared. Your vessel. It is not a warship? It is a patrol craft, Su Min corrected. Its job is to endure a dangerous environment and protect. This, she gestured to the Vorax data, is just another environmental hazard. We have a tool for it. You would fight? You would kill? The word was a whisper from Elria. Su Min's expression hardened, not with anger, but with a clarity that was more terrifying. They are killing 40,000 who cannot fight back. You have a tool that can stop it. Using it is not a question of philosophy. It is a question of arithmetic. She took a step closer. You hoped for friends who would share your garden. You found friends who will stand between your garden and the flood. Let us stand. The bridge was utterly still. Jay looked from Elria's face, etched with centuries of pacifist tradition, to Su Min's, forged in the relentless logic of survival. It was the difference between a prayer and a shield. Elria wrestled with it. The principles of concord screamed against it, but the screams of 40,000 colonists were louder in her mind. She looked at the desperate, frozen face of the dispatcher still on the screen. What? What is your plan? She asked, her voice breaking. Su Min laid it out. It was brutally simple. The Harmony's hand would jump in at a safe distance, its sensors recording everything. The Steadfast would jump closer, using the asteroid belt for concealment. They would use the human ship's overpowered engines built to fight Earth's gravity for a short, violent burst of speed to close the distance. They would target the lead Vorax ships with the mass driver, aiming to break their formation and sow confusion. It was not about a glorious battle. It was about applying a massive, shocking force to a fragile system. It is dangerous, Elria said. Yes, Su Min agreed, but not as dangerous as doing nothing. She looked at her crew. They met her gaze, each giving a slight, firm nod. No fear, just resolve. We need your navigational data for the jump. We will coordinate on the emergency channel. Elria, her shoulders slumping not in defeat, but in the weight of a terrible necessary choice, gave the order. Provide them with all the data. Plot our jump to the edge of the K-Thul system. As the crews burst into action, Jay found himself next to Hana, who was preparing to return to the Steadfast. You are all. So calm, he said. Hana paused. She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw something like sympathy in her eyes. On Earth, we have a saying, she said. The time to sharpen your knife is not when the bear is at your door. Our knife is always sharp. Jay, we live with the bear outside every day. Today, it is at your door. So we will go and meet it. She turned and followed her captain back to their scarred, ugly, powerful ship. Jay watched them go. He thought of the Lumin blossom, which would wilt at a raised voice. He thought of the acidic rain in the human's garden. The hope for gentle friends had been a beautiful dream. But as the Harmony's hand prepared to jump toward a massacre, he understood, with a cold and certain clarity, that dreams could not stop plasma fire. Only a sharper reality could. And the Deathworlders, it seemed, were the sharpest reality the galaxy had ever seen. The atmosphere in the Harmony's hand had settled into a fragile, polite rhythm. The initial shock of the humans' arrival had softened, replaced by a cautious and mutual curiosity. Commander Elria, ever the diplomat, sought common ground. She invited the human officers to a formal meal and a cultural exchange. The meal was a quiet affair. The commons offered a selection of nutrient pastes, cultured proteins, and soft, sweet fruits. The humans, after a quick scan by Ji Wu, accepted small portions. They ate with a focused efficiency, their movements precise. Jay noticed they drank a lot of water. After the meal, Elria led them to the ship's main garden atrium, her pride and joy. It was a vast, climate-controlled dome where flora from 4 benign worlds thrived under artificial suns. The air was perfumed with soft floral scents. Gentle streams trickled over smooth stones. "This," Elria said, her voice full of warmth, "is a living expression of the commons philosophy. Life from different worlds, growing together in harmony. No competition, only mutual support." Jay walked beside Hana, the human xenoecologist who had been quiet until now. He was eager to show her the beauty of peaceful coexistence. He guided her to a particular plant native to his homeworld, the lumine blossom. Its stem was like clear glass, and its flowers were clusters of delicate, glowing crystals that chimed softly in the moving air. "It's beautiful," Hana said, her voice low. She didn't reach to touch it. Instead, she activated a small scanner on her wrist, erecting it at the plant. A faint hum filled the air between them. Fascinating structure. The crystalline petals likely evolved to refract specific wavelengths of your home star for maximum photosynthesis. "Yes," Jay said, pleased. "And the sound pleases the curly birds, who pollinate them. It is a perfect balance." Hannah nodded, still looking at her scanner readout. No detectable alkaloids, neurotoxins, or thigmonastic defensive movements. What deters herbivores? Jay blinked. Herbivores? Plant eaters. Insects, larger fauna. This plant is highly visible, non-toxic, and seemingly fragile. In an Earth environment, it would be consumed to extinction in a single generation. "Oh," Jay said, feeling off balance. "On Kaialan, the ecosystem is gentle. The curly birds keep the insect populations in check. The larger grazers prefer the more abundant mosses. There is no need for such. Chemical warfare." Hannah said. It was a neutral sound, but her eyes were thoughtful. A different strategy. Reliance on external environmental stability and predator balance. A high-risk, high-reward adaptation. On Earth, plants that cannot defend themselves do not survive. She moved on, scanning other plants. Each time, her questions were technical, focused on survival mechanisms. When shown a large, leafy plant with no apparent defenses, she asked about soil composition. When shown a floating aquatic fern, she asked about its salinity tolerance and reproductive rate. Her concept of beauty seemed intertwined with function, with toughness. Later, it was Captain Sumin's turn to offer a gesture. "We have a small ecological module on the Steadfast," she said to Elria. "It is not for beauty. It is for life support and psychological continuity. You are welcome to see it." Elria agreed, and a small delegation, including Jay, crossed the coupling tube into the Earthship. The difference was immediate and jarring. The Steadfast was all harsh lighting, gray metal, and the constant, low thrum of powerful machinery. The air was cooler, drier, and carried the scent of metal and recycled air. Their garden was a sealed cylindrical module about 10 meters long. It was not a place of peace. It was a place of work. The light was bright and white, without warmth. The plants were arranged not for aesthetics, but for efficiency. Hana led the tour. "This is our air recycling section," she said, pointing to racks of fast-growing, tough-looking greens. fast biomass production, high oxygen yield. She pointed to a row of squat, thick-stemmed plants with waxy leaves. These are food crops, genetically hardened for radiation tolerance and low water needs. They contain essential vitamins we cannot synthesize. Then she stopped at a separate, clearly marked section behind a transparent shield. And this is our experimental wild section, a 1 cubic meter sample of a simulated Earth biome. Jay peered in. It looked like a chaotic, dense patch of jungle. He saw a plant with leaves like serrated knives. Another had a beautiful, red, bulbous fruit. Hannah pointed a laser guide at it. That fruit contains a potent neurotoxin in its seeds. The fleshy part is edible, but only after thorough cooking, which breaks down the acidic compounds. She moved the laser. This vine is covered in microscopic barbs that deliver a histamine reaction, similar to a creature you might call a stinging insect. The tree there sheds its bark in acidic strips if damaged. It was a garden of horrors. Every beautiful thing had a hidden weapon. Every bit of life was locked in a silent, desperate war for survival. A low hum filled the module, and from hidden nozzles, a fine mist began to spray over the wild section. Simulated rain cycle, Hannah explained. Then a warning siren gave 2 short blasts. The pH of this simulated rain is 5.2, slightly acidic, standard for many terrestrial regions. Protective gear is advised for prolonged exposure. Jay stared as the rain fell on the vicious plants, which seemed to thrive under it. He thought of the gentle misting systems in the Harmony's Hand atrium. This was not nourishment. This was another environmental challenge to be endured. The guiding principle of Earth's ecology, Hannah said, her voice matter of fact, is what we call survival of the fittest. It is not about harmony, but about competition. A constant pressure that drives adaptation. The strong survive and pass on their traits. The weak do not. She looked at Jay. You spoke of symbiotic relationships. We have them too. But often they are relationships of mutual benefit born from conflict, or even predation. There is a type of tree on Earth that provides a home for a species of ant. The ants, in return, aggressively defend the tree from all other herbivores. It is not peace. It is a negotiated alliance between 2 armed parties. The cultural exchange that followed felt like 2 species speaking different languages about the universe. The common spoke of cosmic harmony, the music of the spheres, the joy of understanding. They showed art that was about color and light and emotion. The humans spoke of endurance, of redundancy, of Murphy's Law, the idea that anything that can go wrong will. Their stories, their art, often involved conflict, struggle, and overcoming impossible odds. They showed images of their architecture, not elegant spires, but structures built to withstand earthquakes and hurricanes. They spoke of their history as a series of narrowly averted disasters. Jay listened to engineer Tae Seok explain the Steadfast's triple redundant power systems. He listened to specialist Ji Woo describe their communication protocols, which assumed constant interference and the threat of jamming. Their entire worldview was a fortress mentality applied to existence itself. Later, back in his quarters on the Harmony's Hand, Jay looked at his lumin blossom. It chimed softly, perfectly beautiful, perfectly helpless. He thought of the acidic rain and a plant with the toxic fruit. He had hoped to find friends who, like his blossom, had found a way to be beautiful despite their harsh world. He had imagined quiet strength. He had not imagined this. The humans were not beautiful despite their world. They were a reflection of it. Tough, adaptable, suspicious, and armed biologically, technologically, philosophically. Their peace was a tense, armed truce with a universe they assumed was out to get them. The hopeful dream of gentle philosophers from a hard world was gone. In its place was a complex, daunting reality. These Deathworlders were not who they had hoped for. The question that now hung in the recycled air of the Commons ship was a sobering one. What, exactly, had answered their call? The docking procedure was a study in contrasts. The Harmony's hand extended its coupling tube, a graceful structure of clear composite that glowed with a soft internal light. It connected to the airlock of the Earthship, the Steadfast, with a sound like a gentle chime. On the other side, the humans acknowledged with a series of sharp, metallic clangs and a hiss of equalizing pressure that sounded far more violent. J stood with the rest of the greeting party in the main reception lounge. Commander Elria was at the front, her posture radiating serene welcome. Jay held a sealed container with his prized lumin blossom, its crystalline petals shimmering. He took a steadying breath, repeating the principles of concord in his mind. The inner door of the airlock slid open. The first thing that struck him was the smell. It wasn't unpleasant, just strong and foreign. It was the scent of ozone, machine oil, and something else, something warm and slightly salty. Then they entered. They were not in delicate environmental suits. They wore powered armor, though it was sleek and form-fitting, not the bulky caricatures from pre-contact fiction. The armor was a matte gray, scuffed and marked in places with black streaks or patches of newer material. It moved with a faint whine of servos, but the beings inside moved with a natural, easy confidence that made the technology seem like a second skin. There were 4 of them. They moved into the lounge and fanned out with a casual precision that felt instinctively tactical. Their leader, the one called Su-Min from the screen, stood at the front. She reached up, gripped the helmet, and with a hiss of releasing seals, removed it. J had studied the human images, but seeing one in person was different. Her face was alive, expressive in a way the images hadn't captured. Her eyes were a deep brown, and they scanned the room quickly, missing nothing: the exits, the number of Commons personnel, the ceiling height. Her dark hair was damp at the temples. She clipped the helmet to her hip. "Commander Elria," Su-Min said, her translator rendering her words into smooth common speech. She offered a gesture that was clearly meant to be respectful, a short, sharp nod of her head. "I am Captain Su-Min of the United Earth vessel Steadfast. These are my officers: Lieutenant Dae-Hyan, Specialist Tae-Seok, Specialist Ji-Woo." Each human nodded as their name was called. Dae-Hyan, a male with a serious square face, kept his hands resting lightly near his equipment belt. Tae-Seok, a shorter man with clever eyes, was already looking at the ship's ambient lighting system with professional interest. Ji-Woo, a female with a calm demeanor, held a small scanning device. "Welcome, Captain Su-Min," Elria said, spreading her long-fingered hands in the universal Commons gesture of open-handed peace. "We are honored by your presence. This is Xenobotanist J, Linguist Kaler, and others of our crew. We come with only peace in our hearts." "We appreciate the sentiment," Su-Min said. Her voice was polite, but it carried a weight, a density that matched her physique. "Protocol requires verification. Your ship's composition and energy signatures are unknown to our databases. A brief scan and a review of your provided data will suffice." "Of course," Elria said. "We have prepared our cultural and biological data for exchange." As Ji-Woo moved forward with her scanner, Kaler offered a data crystal. The exchange was formal, efficient. Jay watched, fascinated despite his nerves. The humans were compact, their bodies dense with muscle. Even relaxed, they seemed coiled like springs. When Tae-Seok moved to examine a wall panel, his steps were firm, heavy on the deck plating. The Commons crew, all from lower gravity worlds, seemed to float in comparison. "Your vessel is impressive," Su-Min observed, her eyes tracing the curves of the lounge. "Minimal radiation shielding. Large volume-to-mass ratio. A single-layer hull? It is a ship of peace, Elria explained warmly. Designed for dialogue, not for hardship. A concept, Sumin replied, and Jay thought he saw the ghost of something in her eyes. Not judgment. Maybe curiosity. Our designs prioritize redundancy and compartmentalization. Our environment is unforgiving of single points of failure. Would you care for a tour? Elria offered. A gesture of trust. Sumin considered for a moment, then nodded. We would. Thank you. The tour was deeply unsettling for Jay. What was normal and elegant to him seemed to provoke quiet, technical comments from the humans. In the garden atrium, Sumin looked at the delicate, floating flora and asked about the waste reclamation system supporting it. In the meditation sphere, Daehyun asked about the tactical defensibility of the large viewports. In the engineering bay, where the silent gravity drive hummed, Tae-seok listened to the chief engineer's explanation, then pointed to a series of crystalline conduits. Primary coolant lines? He asked. Yes, the Vrel engineer, bubbled proudly. A closed-loop system. It has functioned flawlessly for 300 standard cycles. Single conduit? Tae-seok clarified, his brow furrowing slightly. Of course. Efficiency is key. Tae-seok glanced at Sumin, a look Jay couldn't read. The human captain gave a minute shake of her head. It was in the engineering bay that it happened. They were passing by a secondary processing unit when there was a sharp ping, followed by a hiss. A fine bluish mist sprayed from a joint in one of the decorative crystal pipes. An alarm chimed, a soft, melodic tone. Oob rippled with alarm. A minor fracture in a coolant line. Containment protocol active. Please, everyone, evacuate to the forward lounge. Maintenance drones will engage. The Commons crew began to move back, calmly but swiftly. The mist was already spreading, forming a faint cloud. It was a standard industrial coolant for their systems. Non-toxic, but a mild irritant to Sil respiratory systems, and potentially corrosive to Vrel skin. Jay, stepping back, saw the humans weren't moving. Sumin looked at the spray, then at Tae-seok. Grade? Tae-seok was already consulting a device on his wrist. Chemical composition reads as a halogen-based compound. Mild irritant. Skin contact safe for limited exposure. Less acidic than a citrus fruit. Sumin nodded. Daehyun, seal the area. Tae-seok, with me. While the Commons crew watched from the doorway, the two humans walked purposefully into the mist. They didn't run. They didn't even seem to hurry. Tae-seok pulled a small clamp from a pouch on his belt, a crude, mechanical thing of metal, and a tightening screw. He located the hairline fracture in the crystalline pipe, positioned the clamp over it, and began turning the screw. Sumin stood beside him, using her body to shield his work from the worst of the spray. The fine mist beading on her armor and face. In less than a minute, the hissing stopped. The mist began to dissipate. Tae-seok gave the clamp a final pat. Temporary seal established. Pressure holding. They walked back out of the haze, wiping the moisture from their faces with their sleeves. Sumin's eyes were slightly reddened, but she blinked away the irritation. You should install isolation valves at regular intervals, she said to the stunned chief engineer. And redundant lines. A single-point failure in a life support system is a luxury we cannot afford where we come from. The lounge was silent. The elegant, peaceful solution had been to evacuate and wait for drones. The human solution had been to walk into the problem and physically strangle it into submission. Jay looked at the lumine blossom in its case, so fragile it required a dedicated humidity field. He thought of the simple metal clamp now biting into the beautiful crystal pipe. It was ugly. It was brutal. And it had worked. Elria, to her credit, recovered first. A practical solution. Thank you for your assistance. It was a minor issue, Sumin said, as if she had just straightened a picture on a wall. Your ship is beautiful, Commander. A testament to peace. She said the word not with longing, but with the tone of one observing a fascinating, abstract theory. Jay realized then what had been dawning on him since they boarded. These beings weren't just from a dangerous world. They lived in a constant, unending conversation with danger. Their peace was not the absence of threat, but the constant, active suppression of it. They didn't hope for a world that was gentle. They built tools to handle one that was not. The hope for gentle, philosophical friends was evaporating faster than the coolant mist. In its place was a sharp, sobering curiosity. What else, he wondered? Did these Deathworlders consider a minor issue? The starship drifted through the silent dark, a sliver of polished pearl against the velvet black. Inside, the air was still and cool, smelling faintly of ozone and something floral. Jay floated near the main observation pane, a data slate forgotten in his hand. His eyes were fixed on the swirl of a distant nebula, but his mind was planet-side, in the gentle rain forests of his homeworld, Kailan. He missed the soft chime of the crystal leaves. First thoughts, xenobotanist Jay? A melodic voice asked. Jay turned, offering a respectful gesture, greeting to Mission Commander Elria. She was of the Sill species, tall and willowy, her skin a soft lavender hue, large dark eyes reflecting the starlight with a serene intelligence. She was ancient, by Jay's standards, and carried the calm of centuries. I was thinking of the welcome we will prepare, Commander, Jay said, his voice full of a young scholar's enthusiasm. The signal was clear, if simple. A species that can craft such a coherent message from a world like that. They must be profoundly resilient. I imagine philosophers, poets who sing songs of endurance against a violent sky. Elria's mouthparts twitched into a gentle smile. A hopeful vision. The Council shares it. A Deathworld classification does not preclude a peaceful soul. It may forge one, tempered in hardship. She gestured to the galaxy map floating in the center of the chamber. The star-designated soul pulsed with a soft amber light. Next to it, scrolling data in the common script listed the horrors. Gravity, 1.1 standard. Atmospheric composition, highly oxidative. Tectonic activity, hyperviolent. Biosphere, competitively lethal. They reached out. They sought the chorus. That is the act of a friend. The Harmony's hand was the pinnacle of Galactic Commons technology. It moved without sound, its drives bending space with quiet efficiency. It was a ship of light and open spaces, designed to soothe, to welcome. Its crew of 15 represented 4 different species, all dedicated to the founding principle of the Commons, understanding through peaceful concord. Their mission was the most exciting in centuries. First contact. Not with another cautious, advanced species from a benign garden world, but with the impossible, sentient life from a death world. The theories were endless. Most academics believed such planets could only produce monstrous, predatory intelligences concerned only with domination and consumption. The Council and Elria believed this was a chance to prove that wisdom could grow from the hardest ground. Jay spent his shifts reviewing the scant biological data inferred from the signal. The dominant species, self-named humans, were bipedal, omnivorous, robust. Their planet's extreme conditions suggested they would be tough, perhaps with redundant organs, likely slow-moving to conserve energy in the heavy gravity. He imagined them as patient, sturdy beings, perhaps covered in a protective bark-like skin, moving with deliberate care through their dangerous world. He curated a selection of peaceful, luminous plants from Kaialine to give as a gift, symbols of beauty emerging from calm soil. Translation matrix is finalized, chimed linguist Kaler. a small, feathered being from a low-gravity world. Their language structure is fascinating. It has an immense vocabulary for conflict, but also for nuanced cooperation. It is a language of sharp edges and deep bonds. Prepare the standard greeting package, Elria instructed. Art, mathematics, astronomy, the principles of concord. And include Jay's botanical files. Show them the beauty of a gentle existence. Weeks of travel blurred by. The star soul grew from a point of light to a small yellow disk. The Harmony's hand slid gracefully into the system's outer edge. Immediately, the ship's serene hum changed pitch. Sensors are experiencing interference, reported the pilot, a gelatinous Vrel named Oob. His body rippled with concern. Extreme levels of electromagnetic noise across countless frequencies. The space around the third planet is cluttered. High-velocity particulate matter and artificial orbital debris detected. On the main viewer, the blue and white marble of Earth appeared. It was stunning and terrifying. Swirling storm systems larger than continents churned in the atmosphere. The land masses were sharp, rugged, torn by massive mountain ranges. This was not the gentle, eroded hills of a mature world. This was a planet in the violent throes of geological youth, and it was loud. The commons, used to the orderly, dedicated bands of civilized traffic, were assaulted by a cacophony of radio waves chatter, music, data streams, roaring incoherence. It was the sound of billions of voices, all talking at once. Filter it, Elria said, her voice still calm, but edged with focus. Find the clear channel from the planetary authority. Send our identifiers and the peaceful greeting. Before Oob could respond, a new alert chimed. Object on intercept trajectory from the third planet's major satellite. Acceleration is significant and erratic. Jay felt a thrill that was not entirely pleasant. This was it. He moved closer to the viewer. What would emerge from the hangar of that approaching vessel? A sleek craft of welcome? Perhaps something organic, grown from the planet's fierce biology? The ship that resolved on the screen was neither dot, it was angular. A blocky assemblage of gray metal plates, utterly without aesthetic grace. It looked less built and more forged. Scars of pitting and discoloration mottled its hull, telling silent stories of impacts and radiation burns. It did not glide. It moved in short, jarring bursts from clusters of thrusters, changing vectors with a brutal disregard for momentum that made Oob flinch. It was the most aggressively functional thing Jay had ever seen. They are hailing us, Collar said, his feathers puffing up. Audio and visual. Patching it through. The screen shifted. The bridge of the alien vessel was dim, lit by steady, harsh lights. The beings they were strapped into reinforced frames, not floating freely. And they were not what Jay had pictured. They had no bark-like skin. They were mostly hairless, with skin tones ranging from pale to deep brown. Their features were stark, their eyes forward-facing like predators, but their expressions were alert, focused. They wore dark, form-fitting uniforms, patched and worn in places. The one in the center, a female by Jay's best guess, leaned forward. She had sharp, intelligent eyes and black hair tied tightly back. Her voice came through the translator, clear, flat, and utterly calm. Unidentified vessel, this is Patrol Craft Steadfast of United Earth. You are approaching restricted space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. Elria composed herself, radiating peaceful authority. Greetings, children of Earth. I am Commander Elria of the Galactic Commons vessel Harmony's Hand. We received your invitation. We come in peace, with open minds, seeking friendship. On the screen, the human female Sumin, according to her uniform text, glanced briefly at someone off-screen. A barely there flicker of, was it surprise? Then her eyes returned to the viewer. Her lips did not smile, but her tone softened a fraction. Galactic Commons. Your signal was received. Your timing is fortunate. Please hold your position. We will send a docking vector and a boarding party for initial verification. Prepare for physical connection. The communication ended. The quiet bridge of the Harmony's hand felt suddenly colder. The hopeful, poetic philosophers Jay had imagined were gone, replaced by the grim, scarred vessel on their screen and the voice of a soldier who spoke of verification and docking vectors. A boarding party? Whispered Kaler. But the protocols suggest a neutral meeting place. This is abrupt. Elria placed a calming hand on the linguist's shoulder. Their world is different, Kaler. Their customs will be different. We must adapt. This is first contact. Remember the principles. She turned to Jay. Xenobotanist, prepare your botanical samples. A gift of green growing things. It is a universal language of peace. Jay nodded, looking back at the looming, pitted hull of the Steadfast as it maneuvered with jarring precision. He thought of his delicate lumine blossoms, which wilted if looked at with too much negative emotion. He had hoped for friends who would appreciate their fragile beauty. Now, staring at the Deathworlders' answer, he felt a seed of doubt take root. What did beings from a world of fire and stone know of gentle things?